Well, welcome back, folks. We're going to continue on now with reassembly of the Yamaha YL1. Start adding additional components to the frame. In engine assembly, we last installed the two ignition coils on the frame. Now we're going to move on to a lot of these other parts. Some of these you've seen before, such as the canister for the air filter unit, the boot for the air filter unit, the regulator, clamps go on the end of the air intake boot, etc. Some of these parts are NOS, such as the, that I don't believe you have seen before, such as the taillight unit here. This is where the taillight bulb fits in, and this goes with the taillight mounting bracket there. The ignition switch is an NOS unit. I did way back when talk about the ignition switch. That was probably, boy, that was probably 9-10 months ago or so that I talked about the original ignition switch, which I have here somewhere. I'm not sure right now where it is, but this is NOS. This was NOS. The new fuse block coming off the battery, that is still available from Yamaha. I'm not sure that's exactly what the original one looked like, but this part number is what is called out in the parts diagram for the YL1. So that's new. Nuts, bolts, washers, screws, most of those are new. Some of them are replated, but most of them are new. So we're going to go ahead now and start attaching these items. I think I'm going to start with the air boot here and the air filter canister. This will probably be one of the most challenging because I have to fit everything up inside of the frame. And this is one of those items that you want to install early on in the process, because otherwise you end up pulling the battery back out to put this in, which we'll be talking about in a minute. I do have a new battery, a brand new Yuasa battery that is spec for this bike. I don't have acid in it yet, nor certainly have I charged it. I'll be doing that here eventually in probably a later video. So let's go ahead and start installing this boot and air can. The first thing I'm going to do is install this breather, crankcase breather tube, which fits right in that opening right here. Then it just drains out into near the sprocket where the drive sprocket is. So I'm just going to put a little bit of dielectric grease. This is the original part, by the way. I just cleaned it up. And I'm going to go ahead and install this. And get that done with like that. I did check my original photos when I took the bike apart and disassembled it, and that's how that was routed. The neutral light, of course, has already been, wires been connected. Now we're going to install the air intake boot and the air cleaner canister. And as I was preparing to think through installing this, I happened to look at the parts diagram. This is some time ago. And I noticed there seems to be two different versions of this air intake boot. This particular boot, which is I think the original because this is a 66 model. The other boot, the second boot, has a taller lip here that sticks up something like that. And I believe that lip is intended to allow for using of a clamp like this. I did order this clamp from Yamaha, even though I don't believe it's used with this boot. I think this clamp is used with the other version of this air intake boot for a couple of reasons. Number one, this clamp seems to be too wide to go into that space there. And more importantly, I don't think there's room to install it. I think what is supposed to happen here, and I looked at my photos, I didn't get real good photos, disassembly photos of in this part particular. I got more of looking this way. But as best I can tell, this lip right here fits up inside of this relief that you can see inside of the frame here, I think. And allow me to zoom in a little bit for you on that. You can see a depression that's been formed into the metal there, and I believe that's where this ridge fits into, up inside of there like that. And then the air cleaner canister, I think, simply fits down over the top. Something like that. And I don't think it uses a clamp at all. So I'm going to go ahead and install this intake boot, the way I think it's supposed to be. I have not put all this together yet, but I've studied it carefully, and I'm pretty confident how I just described is how it's going to go together. So let's see if we can't make this happen. So that went in pretty easy. Now this next part, I don't think is going to be probably quite as easy, because I got to get that rubber lip up. You're going to have to excuse my hands here a little bit, because I do have to get in here. My fingers. Like that. I think now you can see how I believe this is supposed to fit, like that. So clearly there's no room for this clamp. There's really no way to get in there to install it, and I don't think there's allowance on the boot to accept this clamp anyway. So now I think it's just a matter of installing the air cleaner canister, which was pre-assembled in a previous video. I'll take that screw out that was pre-installed. This L-shaped bracket, the attaching bracket for the canister, and I think the lip, let me see if I can get you a better shot of that. I think this collar right here fits down inside of this piece of the air intake boot. Now just install the retainer screw. And I think that's all that's involved with the air cleaner canister. I've never seen a design like that before, but first time for everything, first time in my experience, but I think we do have it installed correctly. The clamps for the mouths of the carburetors I've got right here somewhere. They are right here. I'm going to put those on right now just so that I don't misplace them. Install them with the screws facing out so you can get at them with a screwdriver a little bit later. And I'm just going to snug those up just a little bit so they don't just move around and rotate on me. So we've got the air cleaner intake boot, the clamps, and the air cleaner canister and element installed. Now we're going to move on to installing the ignition switch. This is that NOS unit I bought off of eBay many months ago. These screws, in fact, both of these and this one had previously had anti-seize applied to the thread, so I don't have to do that again. Come on, there we go. This screw, the top screw for the ignition switch, is also used as part of the grounding system. The ground strap from the battery comes around. The battery sits right in here, and the ground strap wraps around and goes up underneath there. So I'm not going to tighten that, over tighten that, because that'll come out anyway when I install the battery. But at least the switch is now in place. This screw is used for holding the battery box and the regulator right here, and this will fit something like this, and we're going to do that here in just a minute. Before we continue on with mounting the regulator and other work here with the wiring, there's one thing I want to talk about. This is the 3 wires coming up from the wiring harness, plus this plug that goes into the regulator. That's very self-explanatory. So we have a blue wire and a brown wire right there, which will plug into the blue and the brown. But one might ask the question, what's this brown with a white stripe on it right here? What's that go to? Well, the short answer is it goes nowhere. The brown and white, and if you look at the wiring diagram for this bike right there, and you can see the brown and white is used for the flasher unit or the turn indicators. And this bike, 1966 model, at least in North America, turn indicators were not standard equipment. I believe they might have been available through a dealer as an optional installation. And clearly they added the wire into the harness for turn indicators. But for this bike, the brown and white doesn't go anywhere. It's really a dead wire, so we don't even need to be concerned about that particular wire. It doesn't connect into anything. The blue and the brown will plug into these wires coming from the switch, and then there'll be some tie-in to the regulator. As I just indicated, the blue and the brown tie into these 2 wires here coming from the switch. The red wire will go to the regulator. One wire will go to the regulator, which we'll see in a minute when I install the regulator. And then there'll be the fuse block right here will go into the other side of the red. So with the regulator coming into one side, this fuse block going into the other, and this then ultimately will go up to the positive of the battery. And I'm going to have to make up a connector for this to go to the battery, because the battery, well, there is nothing right now. This is it. So I'll have to go from this to a ring spade connector that will connect to the positive terminal of the battery, and we'll deal with that at another time. Before I go ahead and connect the wires, I want to talk a little bit here about this NOS switch. Been around for many years, and you can see these have tarnished a little bit with age, just sitting around, and there's a couple of ways you can go about cleaning that. One is you can take a screw or a bolt that's small enough to fit into those female barrels right there, and you can just simply work it in and out like that and try to clean the terminals and make sure there's no corrosion in there. That's one option. I use that quite often, and in fact I've already done that on these terminals, and you just work that screw back and forth like that to clean up any corrosion that might be on the inside of the female component. You can also use something like a contact cleaner to clean out any debris that might be in there, and if you were to do that with it installed on a bike like I have here, I would take a piece of paper towel or equivalent, spray the cleaner into the terminals, something like this, just to rinse them out. This is a very safe material, chemical. It's plastic safe. It won't damage the plastic. It generally won't damage good quality paint, I found. And then you can also take something like a fine brush like this. This does not happen to be wire, by the way. This is a soft fiber. And you can take that and you can also run that in and out. And there's all different sizes on the ring to clean those terminals if you're so inclined also. Normally you would do this before you put the item on the bike. I had already done that and I didn't mention it earlier, so I thought I'd review it really quick for you now. Back to the wiring itself, again, it's very straightforward. We got the brown here, so the brown goes to the brown. It's color coded. It doesn't make any difference which side you put it on, like that. And then the blue goes to the blue. I'm going to loop that under like that. I believe, if memory serves, the blue is for the tail light, I think. See if we can get that to go together here, like that. So we got the blue connected, and we heard them snap. We have the brown, one of the browns. There must be another brown, or there might be another brown here somewhere before this is over. So we got those all ready to go. We have the red and the black coming up from the stator. That's part of what this is right here. That will connect when I install the voltage regulator. That will slide in here. And then the battery will fit in here. So we're going to go ahead now and install the voltage regulator. I'm going to have to back the camera up or reposition, I think, a little bit to do that. But there's a screw on this side. There is a screw on the opposite side of the frame that locates this voltage regulator. You can see the voltage regulator will fit on the inside of the frame like that. This hook here will be used to locate the battery strap or hold the battery strap, which will go around the battery because the battery will fit in right next to this. There's the red that goes to the red here, and then there's the connector block that will go to this block when we get it all mounted in place. I've gone ahead and removed the screw on the opposite side of the frame. It's very similar to this one. And since the regulator fits like this, that screw comes through the frame and into this mounting tab right here. This mounting tab is for this screw. So I'm going to mount the regulator first, and then I'm going to go ahead and come back and just plug in the wires. The screw on the opposite side has been removed already, so I'm just going to go ahead and take this one out. So we got the washer and anti-seize applied to it. I think I mentioned that before. And this regulator fits in like that. So I'm just start this first screw to hold the regulator on this side, and then I'll have to go around to the other side, and that's just to locate it. So here's the screw that goes on the opposite side, so I might have to fiddle with this just a little bit to get the regulator to line up with the screw. I know you can't see that from your side, but it's a very straightforward. Now we're just going to snug this down. And now the regulator is mounted. And again, keep in mind the battery will fit in here, and we'll talk about the battery a bit more later. So I've got 2 reds, one from the switch, that's what this one is, coming down. And I'm going to plug that in here. You heard it click. And then I have the junction block here, the male, female. Those are cleaned some time ago. I think I might have even talked about that in one of the videos. And I just pushed that together. So that wiring is now complete. You can just tuck that away. I'll have to pull this red one out a bit later when I go ahead and install the fuse block, which will fit up in here along with the battery. In terms of the battery, I have a brand new Yuasa 12N 5.5-3B. This is the battery that was spec'd out. They still offer it. This is a dry battery. In other words, it has not been charged with acid. I will do that eventually, but right now I'm going to leave the battery dry. It has not been activated. Now the battery will fit, and the reason I'm not going to activate it yet is I want to handle it a little bit. I don't want to take a chance of acid leaking out somewhere, but that battery will fit in there like that. There's a strap that will go around, and there's a section up here in the frame. You can't quite see it, but there's a little tab. Battery strap will wrap around here and connect to there. We have the negative here and the positive there, and I'm going to have to make up a negative ground strap because the original, let me see if I can find it for you here. This was the original ground strap I pulled out of the bike, and it was already pinched off or broken. One end of it goes up underneath the switch here for the earth or the ground. The other end then goes inside to the negative post of the battery. So I'll need to make up a new one of those. That's very easy to do. And then in terms of the positive, what I'll end up doing is making a similar positive wire coming from here with a spade connector, so I can bolt that on with a female connector on the opposite end so I can plug this in, and then this will plug into here. And I think I'm going to go ahead, and that will be the next step, is make up those connectors I just talked about. I think that's going to be it for this video today, folks. Next one we'll pick up with making the connectors for the battery, and then we'll move on to installing the taillight assembly and the brake light switch for the foot brake, or the foot pedal for the rear brake. So that's it for this video. Any questions, thoughts, comments, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.